My daughter threw hot coffee at me when I refused to give my credit card to her son. She screamed, "Give me the money or get out." So I quietly walked away. A few days later, she came back home to find an empty house and a stranger in a suit. Inside, "I'm glad you're here. Stay with me until the end. And tell me, what city are you watching my story from? I want to know just how far it's traveled." I was sitting at the kitchen table in my daughter Cynthia's bright, over-decorated kitchen, holding a warm mug between my hands. She'd just brewed a fresh pot, way too strong, just how her husband likes it. I thought it'd be a quiet morning. I figured I was safe. "Grandma," my grandson Zane said, casual as anything, like he was asking me to pass the salt, "can I borrow your credit card again? There's this thing I need for my gaming setup. It's only $5,000. I didn't even blink. I just said, "No." That's when Cynthia broke. She didn't raise her voice. Not at first. She let the silence settle like smoke, thick and hard to breathe. Then, with no warning, she reached for my mug. Not to hit me. She wouldn't dare, but what she did was worse. She tipped the coffee straight into my lap, scalding hot. I gasped and jumped up, the mug slipping from my hand and shattering on the tile. The coffee soaked through my thin pajama pants. My legs burned, my pride burned worse. Cynthia didn't even flinch. "If you're going to be selfish, then maybe it's time you leave." That's what she said, arms folded like she was delivering a company memo. "Either give Zane what he needs or find somewhere else to stay. We're not running a charity, Mom." Charity. That word hit harder than the coffee. I stood there soaked, stinging silent. I looked her in the eye, and for a second I thought I saw something. Regret, maybe, but no, it was just calculation. She was sizing me up, $5,000. I said it low, my voice shaking. "For a kid's electronics," Cynthia's mouth twisted. "It's not a big deal. You've got money. You've been sitting on it since Dad died. I don't even know why you're making this hard." "I've been paying the utility bills," I said quietly. "And I've never once asked you to cover my meds." She rolled her eyes. "You're lucky I even let you stay here. After your surgery, remember, you couldn't walk. I've been managing your life. And this," I wanted to scream. Not from the burn, though that hurt, but from how clear it became. They weren't helping me. They were handling me. Cynthia's help came with strings, no ropes. First loose, then tight, then cutting deep, and right then, I saw it. This wasn't my daughter, not anymore. She saw me as a tool, a number. An old woman who was taking up too much space. Zane just stood behind her, arms crossed, bored, still waiting for the card like it was owed to him. My hands shook as I grabbed a paper towel, trying to blot the hot coffee from my skin. Nobody moved to help. I could barely catch my breath. My heart was pounding in my chest. Cynthia just stood there, arms still crossed, and added with that sharp little smile, "You either hand over the card or be out of here by the end of the day." There it was. Not a plea, a deadline. I looked at the puddle of coffee on the floor, at the shattered mug. One of the pieces landed by my foot, a jagged, little fragment with flowers on it. Something that used to be pretty, just like me. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I walked to the sink, rinsed my hands in cold water, turned off the tap, and said what needed to be said. "I'll be gone before sunset." Cynthia blinked. I think she expected a fight. What she never realized, and what finally came back to me, was this. Quiet doesn't mean powerless. Some debts aren't settled with cash, but with silence and the kind of ending you don't walk back from. The door clicked shut behind me, and I was alone in the guest room. My legs still burned, but the worst of it wasn't from the coffee. It was from knowing she meant what she said. She wanted me out, not because she couldn't afford to keep me, but because I had nothing left to offer. I sat on the edge of the bed, my bed, the same one I'd slept in after the hip surgery, the one Cynthia used to tuck me into every night like I was still her mother, not some obligation she'd taken on. She'd insisted I stay, called it a temporary arrangement. I didn't push back. I was thankful, pathetically thankful. Now I see it clearly. It was a setup. She ran my prescriptions, my grocery lists, the bills, said she'd take care of my banking so I could relax. Told the neighbors she's just too tired these days to come out, when she never even let me know they'd stopped by. And I let her help me right out of my independence. I stood up slowly and made my way to the closet. My suitcase was still up on the top shelf, dusty but zipped. I pulled it down, holding onto the dresser for balance. My hip throbbed, but I didn't make a sound. Pain didn't scare me. What cut deeper was the silence outside the door. No footsteps, no knock. Cynthia had yelled so loud in the kitchen the whole neighborhood probably heard. Zane had watched me flinch, stumble over my words, but neither of them came after me. Not to ask if I was okay. Not to take anything back. I opened the top drawer and pulled out the envelope I'd hidden months ago beneath the extra sheets. Inside were copies of my birth certificate, my insurance cards, and a printed routing number from the bank. I didn't even know exactly why I'd tucked them away back then, but now it made sense. Some part of me had been preparing for this. As I packed, I stayed quiet. No tears, no whispering to myself. I folded every item like it mattered, rolled up the little pouch with my costume jewelry and the one pearl ring my husband left behind. That ring was mine. From the hallway, I heard the TV. Cynthia, watching one of those home makeover shows she always said, "You wouldn't get it." Mom Zane was probably in his room with headphones on, spending someone else's money. I zipped the suitcase and sat again, just to breathe. My eyes scanned the room. The photo of me and Cynthia at her college graduation still sat on the dresser. She'd wanted me in that picture. "You have to be in this with me," she'd said. I looked proud. I wasn't proud now. I was clear. The doorknob turned slightly, then stopped. They heard the packing. Didn't care enough to come in, or maybe they figured if they stayed out of the way, I'd just go, that they wouldn't have to say it twice. They never really knew me. I leaned back, suitcase by my feet, heart thudding like I was waiting on bad news in an emergency room. I already had a life. I wasn't broken. I was tossed aside, and that meant I was free. I grabbed my phone and scrolled through old contacts until I found the name I hadn't touched in months. Edmund M. used to be a lawyer, retired now, lived next door. We used to be close. Still, a decent man. I hit call. He answered on the second ring. "Marlena," he said. "Everything all right?" "No," I replied. My voice was steady. "But it will be." After I hung up, the house went still. That hollow, humming kind of silence you only get in places where love packed up and left. I sat back down, one hand on my suitcase, the other tracing the nightstand's edge where my glasses usually were. But I hadn't picked up a book in weeks. Not since I stopped feeling like a person in this house, and more like something shelved. That's when I noticed it. My purse felt lighter. I unzipped the front pocket. No wallet, no debit card, no ID. My chest tightened. I opened the second zipper, then the third, empty. My hands started to shake as I sat at the edge of the bed and dumped it all out. A few old mints, crumpled tissues, a worn-out lipstick. No card, no wallet, nothing. I had it yesterday. I'm sure of it. I used it at the pharmacy to pay for my ointment. Cynthia drove me. She offered to hold my purse while I walked. I thought she was just being sweet. She wasn't. She was planning her moment. I could still hear her voice from months back, casual as anything. "Let me just take care of your bills, Mom. It's easier if it all comes from one account. I'll set up auto payments. You don't need to worry about a thing. Just focus on healing." Okay, and I did. I gave her the login, the access, the accounts. I trusted my own daughter. And now, I couldn't even remember the last time I saw a statement with my name on it. She made everything paperless, said it was simpler that way. I was an idiot. The thought hit me hard. They didn't love me. They loved what I had. I wasn't family. I was a number. I walked over to the dresser and pulled out the second drawer. There was a little notebook in there. Used to be for groceries when I lived on my own. On the last page, I'd written down my account info months ago. I looked at the numbers. They were mine. But I couldn't remember the last time I saw the card that matched them. I tore through the jewelry box, under the mattress, even flipped through my old Bible. Nothing. They didn't just ask. They took. I sat back down, lightheaded. The coffee's burn was gone. Now it was something colder, deeper. Shame, bitter like metal. And the worst part, I let it happen. I let her take over. I told myself she was helping, that she was stepping up. But really, she was stepping in, stepping over, stepping past. I hadn't seen it clearly until now. Not when she told the bridge. Klapa was too tired to come. Not when she answered my bank's calls. Not when she started approving my Amazon orders like I was a child. She'd been shutting the doors, slow and soft, until there was nowhere left for me to turn. That part almost had me in tears. Not because I was fragile, I'd made it through 3 decades in the ER, losing my husband, and a hip that shattered, like cheap glass, but this I didn't handle with any kind of grace. I glanced again at the framed photo of Cynthia and me, the one from her graduation. She had that same smug grin even then, back when I still believed daughters grow up to love their mothers. Some don't, some just grow into your shadow and call it independence. My phone buzzed. It was Edmund, a text. I'm outside, ready when you are. I stared at the screen, then around the room, at all the invisible pieces of trust cracked and scattered everywhere. I wasn't just walking out of a house today. I was walking away from the lie that I still mattered to her. By the time I opened the door, Edmund was already making his way up the path, moving with that calm urgency he always had. He wore the same navy windbreaker, carried a solid canvas bag like we were heading out for a lazy afternoon. He didn't ask a thing, didn't check me over like I was some busted antique. He just said, "You ready?" I gave a nod. The house stayed silent behind me. No door creaked open. No footsteps came charging to stop me. That silence, that was all the proof I needed. Proof they thought I wouldn't go, thought I couldn't. Edmund grabbed my suitcase and gently took the smaller tote off my shoulder. "You got everything?" he asked as we reached his car. "Everything I still own," I said. He opened the passenger door. "Careful with your hip." That one line nearly cracked something in me. Not because it was sweet, but because it had been so damn long since anyone said something kind without expecting payback. The car pulled away in silence. I watched the streets blur by, every turn peeling me further from the place that stopped feeling like mine. The day Cynthia started running calculations on me like I was a credit card statement. Halfway through town, Edmund finally spoke. "You know," he said, "I saw you crying last week." I blinked. What he didn't glance over, eyes stayed on the road, out on the balcony. "You were real still, holding that little ceramic bird." I didn't even remember the bird, or the crying. I started to speak, then stopped. Felt like I'd been living in someone else's skin, smaller, dimmer. I figured something was wrong when I stopped seeing you at the library. That's when I understood how deep the isolation had sunk. Cynthia didn't just drain my savings, she stripped away the habits that made me feel like myself. The neighbors, the slow walks to the cafe with bitter coffee and half-sweet gossip from the church ladies. She didn't lock me in. She just made everything else too far to reach. "You're not the first I've helped like this," Edmund said quietly. "Plenty of older folks get managed right out of their lives. Happens more than folks want to admit." I didn't respond. Couldn't. I was too busy swallowing tears like they were trying to catch a late bus. "I made a few calls this morning," Edmund added. "Found a place I think you'll like. Independent units, real community feel. You mentioned once you liked the one with the koi pond." I turned to look at him. "That place is too expensive." I saw the brochures before. Cynthia said it wasn't realistic. "Cynthia also said you needed help ordering your own socks," he replied dryly. "Don't give her power she didn't earn." That made me smile, just a little. He reached into the side, console, and pulled out a slim manila envelope. "Start here, just some pamphlets, and we'll talk to someone from financial protection too. If what you're saying about the missing card checks out, we might need to move fast." My chest gave a dull thud. It wasn't panic, not even fear, just the weight of truth finally falling where it belonged. "I never wanted it to come to this," I murmured. "She was my daughter." Edmund gave a slow nod, easing the car toward a red light. "And I'm sure you loved her the best you could. But sometimes love is just the paper around the poison." I turned my face to the window. Somewhere back there, Cynthia might have realized I was gone. Maybe not. But ahead, for the first time in what felt like forever, I saw something open. Not Bossador. We pulled up a little after 11. Silver Hollow. That was the name. The sign wasn't fancy. No gold trim. No carved wood. Just clear lettering on a worn board. But past it, the place looked like a life I used to think only belonged to people in magazine ads. Blooming hydrangeas, a bench tucked under a willow, a koi pond flashing with sunlight like glass. Edmund killed the engine and let the silence hang. I looked at the entrance. "I'm not ready." "For what?" he asked. "To want this." He didn't respond, just gave a nod. That's what I appreciated about Edmund. He didn't rush to fill quiet with pity or warm-sounding lies. He understood when a moment needed room to just be. We walked into the main lobby, and something hit me right away. It smelled like lemon, balm and bread just out of the oven. Not bleach, not grief. It smelled like people still living. The receptionist, Joyce, stood to greet us, kind but not syrupy. "You must be Marlene," she said. "Edmund called earlier. Said you'd be stopping by today. Welcome." I almost told her not to call it visiting. It sounded too final, but I didn't, because deep down, something told me, let it be. We started with the courtyard. Edmund walked slow, letting me set the pace. We passed a small library, a room for crafts, even a senior yoga class. I watched two older women laugh while they fumbled with their mats, and it hit me, they weren't being managed. They were choosing how to live. Every space was full of light, windows in every hallway. No one hovered. No one asked for permission to step outside. When we got to the koi pond, I paused. The fish drifted along, calm and unbothered, like they had all the time in the world. "I used to sit by water like this when I needed to think," I said. "Before all this." "You still do," Edmund said. We sat for a while. I didn't talk. I just was. For the first time in months, I didn't feel like someone else's burden. I wasn't Cynthia's regret. I wasn't Zane's responsibility. I was just Marlene. When we went back inside, Joyce brought us to a quiet tea room and set down a tray. 2 cups, a few lemon cookies, a brochure. No pitch, no pressure. Just something gently placed in front of me. I gripped the cup with both hands, thankful for the heat, and kept my eyes on the brochure. Printed right there was exactly what Cynthia told me to forget about. A small studio with a kitchenette and a balcony. Month-to-month lease. No long-term commitment, move-in ready. Don't get carried away, Cynthia had warned. Places like that are for wealthy retirees, not someone like you. I read the price again. It wasn't cheap, but it wasn't out of reach either. Not if I had what used to be mine. Control over my own money, control over my own choices. "I'm not sure I can swing this," I said, more to myself than to him. Edmund sipped his tea. "Then let's find out. But first, you file the paperwork. A financial protection order. I'll help." That word hit hard. Protection. Not because I was weak, but because I was finally ready to admit I needed protecting from my own daughter. I glanced at the brochure again, then at Edmund. "Okay," I said. "Let's begin." And that was the moment things shifted. I was stepping into something new, something I owned. Sitting at Edmund's kitchen table, I laid out everything I still had. Insurance cards, old bank statements, a folder labeled Medicare that Cynthia once mocked for being so analog, and a yellow legal pad, thin and creased, marked with notes from every shady moment I could recall. "I know it's a mess," I said, "but I tried to keep track." Edmund adjusted his glasses. "Messy's fine. Truth usually is." He flipped through the first few pages, nodding slowly. "Charges from places you don't shop. A Netflix profile called, quote, Blatterzane. PayPal withdrawals, at 3 a.m. This is good. Really good." I sat still across from him, hands folded, posture straight. I didn't feel powerless anymore. I felt sharp. I had something they hadn't counted on, proof. That card might have disappeared, but my memory hadn't. And now that I was finally looking back with clear eyes, everything was starting to add up. Cynthia hadn't stepped in out of love. She'd planned it, controlled everything like it was a business move. "Do you still have a printer?" Edmund asked. I nodded. "In Luther's old office, still connected to the Dell. Then tomorrow, we'll scan these pages," he said. "I'll put you in touch with someone who specializes in financial abuse. They're discreet. It's not just about reversing transactions, they build protection cases." He paused. "But we have to move quickly. Once Cynthia catches on that you're not coming back, she might try to cover her tracks, especially if the accounts are still under her name." "They are," I said. "Some of them. But the house." My voice faded. Edmund looked up. "It's in your name. Cynthia had it transferred before my surgery, said it would make hospital stuff easier." Edmund blinked, then leaned back. "The house she's living in." "Yes." He let out a breath that sounded almost like a laugh. "Well, that changes everything." He stood and pulled a small lockbox off a shelf. Inside were official-looking forms with colored tabs sticking out like sharp little flags. "Make copies of everything. Every single page. Get notarized statements. If you can list the exact dates she pulled money, even better." I nodded, already flipping to the next page of my notes. My handwriting was a mess, but I remembered every detail. "Should I call her?" I asked. "Let her know what I'm doing?" "No," Edmund said. Let the paperwork speak. It'll say it better than you ever could. That stuck with me. Let the paperwork speak. Let it hold every word I never had the guts to say out loud. Let it stand for all the times I was quietly pushed aside, the kind of betrayal that came dressed as affection, smothering disguised as concern. Let it speak where I stayed quiet. You tried to claim me like property, but I kept the proof. That night I went through every document, scanned page after page, organized folders until well past midnight. My back hurt, my eyes burned. But I didn't stop, because now I had something more than just a reason to survive. I had a case. And even if no apology ever came, the paper trail would still be there. For the attorneys, for the system. For me, I was finally writing it all down. The truth they never thought I'd live long enough to say. Cynthia had no idea. I still had the deed. She never bothered to check. Just figured taking over my life was permanent. Like everything else she'd quietly taken. So when she pulled into the driveway 2 days later and saw a stranger with a clipboard on her lawn, I imagine it short-circuited something inside her. That perfect control she thought she had, starting to crack. The woman was a real estate agent, Charla. I'd talked to her the day before. Edmund referred her, sharp, private, not the chatty type. Cynthia stepped out of the car already angry. I wasn't there. I was exactly where I needed to be. 3 towns over, sitting on the shaded balcony of my short-term place at Silver Hollow, iced tea in one hand, signed reassessment papers in the other. Edmund dropped them off that morning. I didn't need to be there for the blow-up. I just needed the documents to land first. Cynthia called. Obviously, 3 calls straight to voicemail. I picked up on the 4th. Mom, what the hell is going on? There's a realtor here walking through my house. Your house, whatever. She says, you ordered an evaluation. I let a second pass. That's right. Quiet. Then poison. You're not serious. Dead serious. I could practically hear her pacing. You don't even live here anymore. What is this? Some guilt play? Trying to humiliate me? No, I said flat. I'm just taking back what was mine to begin with. This is my house, she snapped. No, I said again, steady. It's the house you've been living in, running with money that was never yours. I let you act like the caretaker. That job is over. You can't just throw us out. I didn't throw you out, Cynthia. You told me to go. The silence that followed felt like a heavy snowfall. Quiet but crushing. She had no clue I remembered every detail. How she'd shifted the deed to my name under the pretense of helping with hospital paperwork. How I signed everything without looking too close, because I trusted her. But there was one thing I did read, and it stuck. I never gave her full power of attorney. So, legally, morally, technically, the house was mine, and now it was being reassessed, listed, and locked down. From her, Cynthia spoke again, voice cold. You're being cruel. I didn't argue, didn't explain, just said the one thing that shut her down. You only miss me now that I said no. Then I hung up. Charlotte texted me half an hour later. Evaluation's done. Client Cynthia tried to step in. I stayed professional. Strong resale value. We'll touch base tomorrow. Edmund called later too. Said she tried to reach me. Left a voicemail, full of threats. Let her threaten, I told him. Because for the first time in a long time, I wasn't scared of her rage. I wasn't even mad anymore. That feeling had burned off. What was left was something colder, solid. I was sure that love without respect is just control dressed up as care. Sure that family doesn't mean a thing if all it stands on is manipulation. Sure that even if all I had was this chair, this tea, and my name on a stack of legal paperwork, I was still freer than I ever was in that house. That night, I went to bed early, and for the first time in years, I locked the door. Not because I was afraid of what might walk in, but because I finally had something I wanted to keep out. The front doors at Silver Hollow are made of glass. Thick, clean, expensive looking. You can see everything on the outside, but nothing gets in unless you open the door for it. That's why I didn't flinch when I saw Cynthia show up. I was in the community library that morning, flipping through an article Edmund had highlighted for me on elder financial abuse. My tea sat next to me, untouched, bitter, but not as bitter as the paragraph I'd just read. Then the front desk rang my room. There's a Cynthia here to see you, the receptionist said, calm as anything. Want us to bring her in? No, I said, but you can tell her I'm watching. They didn't press. Staff here had seen it before. Kids showing up when what's at stake isn't love but paperwork. I stepped into the sunroom just off the main lobby. From there, I could see everything without being seen. Cynthia stood in the entry, tight jeans, blood-red blouse, pacing like a lioness in a glass cage. She looked furious, like the air itself had crossed her. The receptionist went to speak with her again. Cynthia pointed, sharp and loud. I saw the gesture clear, as anything, accusing, arrogant. She had no idea I was behind the tinted glass, no idea she was the one outside now. I stepped back, just enough to stay out of sight. Not because I was afraid, because I chose not to be seen. That's a kind of power people like Cynthia don't expect you to take. Not the power to argue, the power to look away. 10 minutes went by. Security came. Not loud, not harsh, just steady. A woman in a navy blazer with a name tag spoke to Cynthia. Calm, professional. Cynthia by now was flailing, talking too fast, gesturing to everything but herself. The wall, the ceiling, the brochure rack, maybe even the air. Anything but in. Finally, she spun on her heel and stormed out. The glass door slid shut behind her like a period. I went back to the library. My tea was cold now. I wasn't. That afternoon, Edmund stopped by. I told him what happened. She came all that way just to be turned away, he said, shaking his head. She must have thought you'd still be who you were. She thought I was the version of me who believed silence meant peace, I said. He nodded slow. That version's long gone. We walked out to the garden. I carried a tray with 2 iced lemonades the staff had left for us. I didn't have to explain anything else. They already understood. I sat down on the garden bench I always liked best, the one with ivy wrapped around the legs and a clear view of the koi pond just a few steps away. A light breeze moved through the leaves. Cynthia had come all that way for something, maybe to take back control, maybe to confess, maybe to flip the story. She left empty because there wasn't a single thing left in me to hand over. Not guilt, not approval, not even my attention. And the calm I felt right then, it didn't come from winning. It came from hearing someone walk away without slamming a door behind them. I reached over and gave Edmund's hand a soft squeeze. I don't think I'm scared of her anymore, I whispered. He smiled. That, he said, means she's really gone. 2 days later, Edmund called just after breakfast. It's time, he said. You still want to sell the house? I didn't pause. Yes. He met me an hour later at Silver Hollow, carrying a folder. Inside was the full title deed, my notarized ID confirmation, a blank trust form, ready to guard everything Cynthia assumed would be hers. We sat out on the sun porch, papers spread between us. She's going to lose it, I said. Edmund smirked. Let her. Losing it means the mask comes off. I signed every line, printed, initialed, signed again. Luther would have laughed at how my tongue peeked out when I focused. But this wasn't just a house sale. It was a cutoff. The house Cynthia lived in, paraded as hers, pointed out like a trophy. That house was never hers. She painted the walls, fine. Bought a couch, using my credit, yeah. Swapped out the doorknobs, picked out tile, but the bones, the foundation, that was mine. Always was. We filed the trust quietly, moved the house into the Marlene Langley Irrevocable Living Trust, not because I was scared she'd sue, but because I needed something solid, untouchable, even by a daughter who knew how to twist things. The next day, the title was no longer in my name alone. Cynthia wouldn't know yet, but legally, it was done. And I had something else moving in the background. With help from a financial abuse specialist Edmund had put me in touch with, I filed to freeze all activity connected to my old bank account. Anything in the past 6 months would be flagged. The specialist asked if I had anything to back it up. I have 12 pages, I said, handing over the journal, dates, details, amounts. She flipped through slowly, her eyebrows lifting higher with every entry. You weren't just being taken advantage of, she said. You were being harvested. I didn't react. I already knew. Now, so did the law. When I returned to Silver Hollow, something in me had shifted. Not joy, exactly. Not yet. But I could breathe. Again, like I wasn't clenching myself quiet anymore just to keep the peace. Back in my room, I took out the envelope Luther left me the year before he died. I'd never opened it. It had stayed buried at the bottom of my keepsake box, marked in his handwriting, only when you're tired of pretending you're okay. My hands shook as I opened it. The letter inside was short, Just a few lines, Marlene. If they ever make you feel smaller than the woman I married, don't argue, don't explain. Just leave. You don't owe anyone the right to shrink who you are. Use what's yours, and make damn sure no one ever takes it again. Tucked underneath was a check uncashed. 10 grand. I stared at it for what felt like forever. Then I laughed, deep and sharp, until it hit bone. He knew, even back then. Luther had understood the world could shift on you. Even blood could flip. I called Edmund. You free? I asked. For you, always. Then let's sell the house, I said, and start a trust no one else can touch. He paused. You ready for what comes next? I glanced around the room. Sun pouring in, the koi pond catching the light, my old scarf draped over the chair. Yeah, I said, because this time, I'm not reacting. I'm taking it back, and that check, I cashed it that afternoon. Not because I needed the money. Because I wanted the world to see I'm still building. Cynthia always thought she'd get the last word. She counted on it. She spoke louder. Her texts were novels. Her guilt dressed up like concern. She thought if I went quiet, it meant she'd won. So when the envelope came, thick with legal weight and official stamps, I pictured her just standing there, hand on the knob, knowing, and when she finally opened it, that click of the lock behind her did all the talking I never had to do. Inside was the start of the end. A clean notice from the trust's attorney. As of now, Cynthia Andrews no longer has access to any accounts, assets, or records tied to Marlene Langley. It was brief, straightforward, no blame, no drama, just the line, and that's what broke her. She called me 7 times that day. I didn't answer. On the 8th, she left a voicemail. Mom, this is insane. You're actually listening to him over your own daughter. Do you even realize what you're doing? You're throwing away your family. Family. She used that word like it meant forgiveness on demand, like it should cancel out everything, every guilt trip, every lie, every stolen cent. But family isn't a shield, it's a privilege, and she lost it the second she dumped hot coffee in my lap and told me I deserved it. I forwarded the voicemail to Edmund, just in case. Then I did something quiet, but solid. I sent her nothing, no reply, no closure. I let that letter do what I never could, draw a line with legal ink she couldn't cry through. Edmund called that night. She got the letter, didn't she? He laughed. You didn't even blink. Why would I said. I already buried the part of me that used to explain. That night, I slept with the windows cracked open. The air smelled like rain. And in my dream, I wasn't hiding anymore. I was in the middle of the house, my house, holding keys I never handed over. No Cynthia, no shouting, no guilt. Just quiet. The next morning, there was a small white envelope under my door at Silver Hollow. No return address, handwritten. I knew it was her. I didn't open it. I tore it in half and fed it into the shredder by the front desk. Because this time, I didn't need to know what she wanted. I didn't need another apology with a price tag. This time, I believed the silence more than her voice. And silence, when it's yours, can be its own kind of power. That afternoon, Edmund stopped by with some documents, trust updates, a list of secured accounts, and a few numbers in case I ever needed to get in touch with law enforcement or the trust officer directly. As I signed the last page, he looked at me and said, You know, you've done something most people never manage to pull off. What's that? I asked. You ended the cycle, not with a bang, not with a scream, but with a locked door and a clear name. I leaned back in my chair, and for the first time since Luther passed, I let myself believe I was finally home. Home in my own skin. It was a Thursday, right after lunch. The halls of Silver Hollow were still, and that soft, golden sunlight had spilled over everything the way it always did before the koi pond lit up. I was sitting on a garden bench with Ethel, both of us resting our hands on the same folded quilt. We've just wrapped up our usual talk about the bridge tournament and how the new ladies couldn't shuffle worth a damn. Edmund was supposed to meet us soon. That's when I saw them. Cynthia and Zane, walking up the curved brick path toward the front entrance. Cynthia's stride was fast, furious. Zane trailed behind, all slouch and attitude, the same smug slump that used to make my stomach twist even before the whole $5,000 coffee stunt. They were ready for a confrontation. What they didn't realize was that I didn't have anything left for them to take. The security guards saw them first. Joanne, sharp-eyed and steady, came out from behind the front desk before either of them could reach the door. Cynthia waved her arms, pointing past Joanne toward the garden. Zane rolled his eyes and shoved his hands deep into his hoodie. Joanne held her ground. I didn't get up, didn't flinch, didn't move. Ethel glanced toward the lobby, tense. Should I call Edmund? No, I said. Let her see me calm. I wanted Cynthia to see what peace looked like when it didn't need her permission. She spotted me through the glass and tried to push past the desk. Joanne blocked her. Cynthia started yelling. I couldn't make out the words, but I recognized the shape of them. Rage, desperation, that frantic grasp at control as it slips away. Zane looked over and saw me. His eyes locked on mine, and for a moment, there it was. Not guilt, not affection, panic, not because he missed me, because the money was gone, and I wasn't going to be bled dry anymore. Joanne raised her hand and pointed back toward the parking lot. Cynthia threw her arms up. Zane said something low and turned to go good. Let him take the lead for once. Cynthia stood, frozen for a beat, arms stiff, face pale with fury. Her lips trembled. She mouthed something. Mom. But I didn't move, didn't wave, didn't stand. I stayed there, holding Ethel's hand, wrapped in the same quilt Luther used to drape over my shoulders when I'd fall asleep on the couch during Jeopardy reruns. They walked off. I watched until they shrank into silhouettes on the driveway, until the engine rumbled and the car pulled away like it hadn't once carried my entire world. Ethel exhaled. You didn't even blink. I smiled. I already said goodbye. They're just now catching up. Later, Edmund showed up with a bag of scones and a small bunch of flowers from his garden. I told him what happened. He nodded. They'll come back. I know, I said. But I won't. That night, I wrote it all down in my journal. When they came at me full of rage, I stayed calm. That's when you know you've moved on. When you don't feel the need to shout back. I tore out the page and slipped it into a small frame by my bed. Next time they come hunting for a reaction, all they'll get is their own face staring back through the glass of a locked door. 2 days later, it showed up, an off-white envelope, handwritten, slipped into my Golden Pine mailbox. The penmanship was unmistakable, flawless cursive, just tilted enough to pretend it was graceful. Cynthia's eyes stared at it for a long minute, not because I didn't know what it was, but because I did. Ethel caught me standing still in the lobby, letter in one hand, coffee in the other. From her, she asked. I nodded. Want me to open it for you? No, I said. I don't need anyone else seeing this lie. I didn't open it there. I took it upstairs, set it on the little writing desk Luther used to sit at, and waited for the sun to catch the far window, just like it used to when I'd help him sort taxes and write letters to old war buddies. Then, I sat, breathed, and opened it. First word, Mom, not dear Mom, not I'm sorry, just Mom, like she still had that right. The first paragraph played out just like I expected. A few unsteady stabs at regret. How things spiraled. How she never meant for me to feel shoved aside. How it all moved too fast. She called it a misunderstanding, like that word could patch a hole big enough to swallow 20 years. Then came the real reason. Line 3. We're having a hard time now. Bills are stacking up. Zane didn't get approved for the car loan after all. There it was, the ask. Like always, that apology, just the lure. And I was supposed to bite, same as before. Because I used to, because there was a time I handed out second chances like candy, no questions asked. But I wasn't that woman anymore. Not the one who'd let Cynthia rearrange her mail and call it help. Not the one who dulled her instincts just to keep the noise down. I'd made peace with something else now, the truth that not every daughter is a gift, some are warnings. The letter ended with, maybe we can talk. I really miss you. We all do. I closed the page and stared at the envelope again. It was thick. She'd tucked something extra inside. I reached in. There it was. A personal check. From me. From one of those joint accounts she once set up just to make things easier. Unused. Slight tear at the edge. $3,500. Memo, line, car repairs. I hadn't written it, but my name was right there. Clean as day. She must have held on to it. Or forged. It may be both. Didn't matter. I didn't need to know which. What I did know, this wasn't peace. This was bait, dangled with a fake tear and a signature that used to mean something. I folded the check in half. Then again, and again. until it vanished into my fist like every empty promise she ever made. I walked it to the shredder. No words, no hesitation, just paper turning to dust. Left the envelope open on the desk, let it sit there like a body. A reminder that some letters don't deserve an answer. Later that day, when Edmund came by with his usual lemon cake, he saw it and raised an eyebrow. She tried again. I handed him what was left of the letter. He read it quietly, then handed it back. Still think you're an easy target? Not anymore. I didn't say much after that. Didn't write anything down that night either. No need. The words were already carved in my head. I don't care what you meant. What you did was enough. The phone rang just after sunrise. I was already awake, watching the koi glide through the mist out back, a mug of hot water steaming next to me. Edmund's tone was steady. The trust flagged another fake check. Same account, same signature, but you didn't sign it. I know, I told him. She sent me one just last week. There was a pause. Well, he said, now the bank knows too. Cynthia had tried one last time to bleed my old accounts, but this time, the trust's protections kicked in hard. The bank had evidence, withdrawals, signatures, emails traced to her IP address, even a voicemail where she asked a rep to check her mother's balance, like she still had any claim to my name. She wasn't sneaky. She was just that desperate. Edmund went on. The financial abuse specialist filed a report with elder protection. It's already under review. My chest didn't cave in. It opened up because I knew, finally, I hadn't just gotten away. I'd baited the trap and waited. A few hours later, 2 plainclothes officers came to Silver Hollow, not for Cynthia, for a quiet, respectful sit-down with me. One asked questions, the other wrote everything down. They asked about my records, my journal, the trail of withdrawals. I gave them everything, copies, notes, everything highlighted and organized. I was prepared. As they left, the younger officer said, "You're not the first Mrs. Langley, but you're one of the few who caught it in time." I almost corrected him. It wasn't early, it was just early enough. By noon, it was official. Cynthia was being investigated for financial misconduct, elder fraud, and forgery. Zane's name came up tied to one of the flagged transactions. I didn't celebrate, but I didn't grieve either. I sat in the garden and thought about all the times she'd said, "You're lucky to have me," while shaping my whole life into something that only worked for her. She'd always treated me like a locked door. She'd already had the key to. Never once thought I'd change the locks. But I had. That afternoon, Ethel stopped by with warm banana bread and 2 mugs of ginger tea. She knew, everyone at Silver Hollow knew, not because I said a word, but because they'd seen the storm coming and watched me sit through it without flinching. "Do you think she'll be arrested?" Ethel asked softly. "I don't know," I said, "and it's not my call anymore." That's what freedom really was. Not revenge, distance. Cynthia didn't just lose money, she lost access to my name, my thoughts, my life. She couldn't forge that back. The game was over. Because when someone bets on your silence and you finally speak, that's when they realize they never had control. That night, Edmund and I sat out on the back patio under a wide navy sky. He poured us each a small glass of wine and said, "She underestimated you every step of the way." "I underestimated me too," I told him. He lifted his glass. "To recalculating," we clinked, and I said something I hadn't said in years, but knew was true now. I'm safe. Not just from Cynthia, but from having to justify myself to anyone who mistook my kindness for weakness. That night, I slept with the window open again. And when the wind came, it didn't sound like a warning. It sounded like applause. I started waking up before the sun again, not because I had to, just because I could. The mornings here are slow, almost rehearsed. Someone always hums down the hall. Joyce reads the paper in the lobby like it's still gospel, and the scent of baked pears creeps under every door like it's welcome. The silver light cuts across my floor just the way I asked them to arrange my bed, south-facing. It matters more now, where the sun hits first. I don't rush to the mirror anymore. No one here expects powdered cheeks or apologies for what time's done to me. I put on the green cardigan, Luther's favorite, the one he said made my eyes look like spring, even when it was February. I sit, I listen. I start the day with heat in my hands, not demands in my ears. When I first moved in, they called this place temporary. An adjustment window, but temporary things don't get labeled drawers and real curtains. I picked out every damn one. No one else touched my closet. The trust kicked in last month, fully active, and with it came something better than money: autonomy. The bank balance is clean, tight, mine. The lawyer even added a clause: no changes can be made without my written consent, and an in-person check-in. I keep the document in a folder marked Quiet Power, because that's what it is. I didn't tell Cynthia I was putting the house on the market officially. I didn't owe her that. Edmund handled it, and when the papers were signed, I didn't toast. I watered the plant in my windowsill, the same one she said looked cheap when I brought it to her house 4 years ago. It's thriving now. Settlement from the bank fraud case came through, too. Not massive, but enough. Zane's name appeared once on a flagged Venmo trail, linked to a payment labeled reimbursement for grandma's meds. I hadn't been sick in 6 months. He's 18 now, not a kid, just a man who learned from his mother that taking is faster than earning. He sent a message last week, 2 lines, no greeting. Sorry, I didn't know it went that far. Just thought it was how families help. I didn't reply because I know that tone. It's not remorse, it's strategy. Edmund and I meet every Tuesday for coffee. His place, not here. No chaperones. No incident reports. We sit in his quiet kitchen, the one with the cracked tile and the old Cubs pennant on the fridge. And he lets me talk without interruption. He knows what to do with silence. That's why I keep him. You're lighter, he said last week. Something shifted. I stopped carrying the version of me that begged, I said. And I meant it. I joined a small group in the community, not because I needed friends, but because it felt good to share air with people who weren't waiting to correct me. We meet once a week under the willow by the koi pond, talk about nothing, talk about everything. Ruth used to be a judge. Barbara ran a bakery until she was 75. None of us are here because we gave up. We're here because we figured out how not to be managed. There's a woman named Clara, sharp as razors, wears linen like armor. She lost her son to something colder than distance. Said she stopped trying to explain the loss once she realized silence was the only answer that didn't lie. I liked that. I've started writing again because of her. Nothing long, just fragments, things I thought I forgot how to say. Every night, I light the lamp by my chair and read one page from the old blue journal I kept hidden back when Cynthia still handled my mail. The one where I scribbled down questions I wasn't allowed to ask out loud. What would happen if I said no? What would happen if I left and didn't leave a key behind? What do I do with the version of her that I still love, even if she doesn't exist anymore? No answers yet, but asking feels less dangerous now. Last Sunday, a woman named Nora moved into the unit across from me, soft-spoken eyes like they've seen every betrayal twice. She knocked on my door holding a plate of banana muffins and said, "I heard you're the one who took her daughter to court." She smiled. "We should talk." So we did. 4 hours. Her story isn't mine, but it rhymed. I told her, they always act like you're being dramatic, like you imagined it. But you didn't. They just got used to your silence. Nora nodded, eyes wet but not weak. And then you stopped being quiet. Exactly, I said. Sometimes, people don't come here to die slowly. They come here to stop dying in someone else's story. That night, I sat with Edmund on the patio, warm blanket over our laps, watching a couple of new koi dart under the surface like they knew secrets. He handed me a cup of something sweet. "You think she'll try again?" he asked. "She might," I said. "But this time, she'll be trying to break into a locked door with a fake key." He smiled. I didn't need revenge. That's what surprised me. I didn't need a courtroom victory or an apology pressed into a voicemail. I just needed the paperwork to speak where I once stayed silent. And it did. It still does. Tomorrow, I start volunteering in the garden program. Silver Hollow lets residents plant their own plots. I picked tomatoes and lavender. Something useful. Something soft. Both need sun and time, not force. I sleep better now. No one jangles the doorknob at midnight, asking for something. No one calls me mom like it's a trick question. They say forgiveness is for the forgiver. Maybe. But some things don't need a grave or a grace. They just need to be left behind. I stood in front of the last box I hadn't opened. The one marked in black ink. Guest room closet 2023. It sat on the far end of my bookshelf. Quiet, square, patient. Edmund offered to help unpack it weeks ago, but I told him no. Some things you face alone. Inside were fragments. The pearl ring from Luther, tucked in the original velvet. A church bulletin from a service I barely remember. And at the very BAFTA, folded like a mistake I meant to forget, was a photo. Cynthia at 15, braces barely off, holding a blue ribbon from the science fair. I looked young in it. So did she. Before control took the place of care. I didn't cry. I didn't talk to the photo like I used to when I still believed mothers could fix everything with another round of forgiveness. I just stared for a moment, then laid it flat in a small wooden box labeled "Proof I Tried" and closed the lid. Some grief doesn't howl, it just stops knocking. That afternoon, I walked to the koi pond. The lavender I'd planted last month was already pushing through the soil, stubborn, soft, and scented like something that wouldn't ask for anything in return. Clara joined me. She carried 2 folding chairs, handed me one, then sat beside me with that quiet fierceness I liked in her. "You hear?" she said. "Zane posted about you." I raised an eyebrow. "Posted where?" "Social media. Said you abandoned family for money." A bunch of vague jabs. No names, but anyone who knows you could read through the cracks. I didn't flinch. I didn't even feel it. "Let them talk," I said. Clara tilted her head. "Doesn't sting." "No," I said. "Not when you're not living in the same story anymore." She let that sit, then added, "I think you're the bravest woman here." I shook my head. "No, just the first one to stop confusing abuse for sacrifice." Later that week, I got a letter from the lawyer. The trust had processed the house sale. Final. Funds cleared, distributed exactly as I asked. The balance sat in an account under the Langley Legacy Fund. Not for Cynthia, not for Zane, not for apologies with deadlines. It was designated for something better. A women's support network, based in the county, for seniors pushed into financial silence by their own children. I made the first donation anonymously, but I signed the mission statement myself. A woman's worth is not defined by what she gives away to be loved. That same day, I walked past a bulletin board in the Silver Hollow Common Room. There was a flyer for a writing group. They met Thursdays. First-person essays. Nothing flowery. Just life. Sharp-edged and true. I signed up. I didn't use my last name. I used Marlene L. the first meeting. I sat between 2 widows and a former librarian with ink still on her fingers. They read poems about grown children who only visited on holidays, and how love letters age differently depending on who keeps them. I didn't read anything that first day, just listened, let the voices swell and crack and settle. And when it was quiet, I finally raised my hand. "I've been rewritten too many times to remember the original," I said, "but I'm here to find the version that doesn't ask for permission." They nodded, no applause, just acknowledgement. That was enough. The next morning, Edmund knocked on my door with something behind his back. "Close your eyes," he said. I didn't. He smiled anyway, handed me a plain envelope. "What's this?" "Your name, printed, permanent." I had it framed. Inside was the finalized certificate, the Langley Legacy Fund. Founder, Marlene Langley. Legitimate, filed, protected. A name they couldn't misuse. Not anymore. I held it like breath. Not because I needed recognition, because I needed proof that the woman they tried to edit out of her own story had made it to the last page still holding the pen. That night, I sat by the window and wrote one sentence in my journal. I kept what mattered, myself. If you've listened to my whole story, maybe now you understand why I'm no longer afraid of silence. I used to believe silence meant peace, that it was how you kept a family together. But the truth is, silence only hides the wounds as they cut deeper. I was pushed out of my own life by the people I called family, by my own daughter, the one I once believed would carry the love I tried so hard to protect. But when love turns into manipulation, when helping becomes controlling, when trust is used as leverage, then silence is no longer the right choice. I've come to understand that sometimes the best kind of protection isn't forgiveness. It's boundaries, it's paperwork, it's the law, it's a locked door and a self-respect that can't be drained out of you. So if you were me, what would you do? Would you stay, sacrificed until the very last piece of yourself is gone, or would you stand up and reclaim who you are? I genuinely want to hear your thoughts. May God always bless you, and may you never have to choose between family and self-respect the way I once did.